Hey everyone, I'm Sandy Miller. It's great to be back in class with you guys this semester, and um, we're talking about rural social work. And I've really enjoyed reading these first two chapters. So, if someone asks me what rural social work is, I think that on page 43 in our textbook, it uh, gives a good start to explaining what rural social work is. It says that in a rural community, most everything is connected: clients, community members, families, organizations, and there are few secrets, and that's true. I feel like this is a good introduction into looking at and explaining rural social work. Um, People are very connected in rural areas. I grew up in a rural area, and when I read these two chapters, they really resonated with me. One of my early social work jobs was in the small town that I grew up in. And at that time, it was really beneficial that so many people knew my parents and my grandparents, and it allowed me to connect with people in a different way with my clients and their families. There was already this level of trust. And with people who didn't necessarily know me, they would say, "Who's your daddy? Who's your granddaddy?" And then when they figured out that we had some sort of connection, it was a little easier, maybe, to build that relationship. So I thought that it was interesting and true. In the book, in chapter one, talked about social workers being known by their community. And in rural communities, your personal life will definitely be watched more closely, and people tend to know what other people are doing in these small rural communities. As in the example I gave about working in my hometown, this can sometimes be helpful in connecting with people, but can also be difficult for the personal life of the social worker for sure. Um, these connections can also make difficult situations for patient confidentiality sometimes. So everyone knows what everyone else is doing, that sort of thing. So, for example, who's in counseling? Who's their counselor? Where are they going to counseling? And, people are so interconnected in these rural communities that confidentiality can be challenging sometimes. In social work, family units are very important. And when looking at social work on a micro level, there are different things to consider within the community, within these family units. One of the things our book talked about that I really liked was the language. Different areas have different sayings that make sense to the people in that area, but maybe not to outsiders. And I've seen that happen. Food is something else we can look at on a micro level. In our book on page 50, it talked about items like grits and venison. And I personally love grits. I grew up in the South, so I grew up eating grits. I still love them today. However, I have a very good friend from New York City, and she would not eat grits. No way. She has no interest in them. She can't understand why I would want to eat them. And it we laugh about it actually. So they talked about hunting. My husband is actually a hunter. We eat venison a lot. He's a deer hunter. When my kids were little one time, we ran out of deer meat. We had ground beef tacos, and my kids couldn't believe they were eating beef tacos, which is much more greasy than venison tacos. So, um, like I said, reading this really resonated with me and a lot of things in my life. So, I've enjoyed these two chapters a lot. When involved in rural social work, you'll want to look at the mesosystems as well. On page 54 in our text, it talked about how rural communities have been compared to very large extended families because almost everyone knows something about everyone else. And they use the example of the Hatfields and McCoys out west as an example of those families and those kind of dynamics. And of course, when looking at rural social work, we want to look at the macro systems that are involved. What is the power structure of that community? Who's making decisions? Who are the people making decisions for the resources that we as rural social workers are going to be needing to best serve our clients in our communities? And one of the examples they gave for like the identity of a community in the book was an apple festival. And the town I grew up in actually has an apple festival every year. We didn't have one this year because of all the damage in Appalachia from Hurricane Helene, but since I was a kid, we've always had an apple festival. So um, I thought that was pretty cool too, actually. And you, of course, doing rural social work, you want to look at the heritage of that community. Learning that is a good way to connect with the people and, you know, show them that you have an interest in knowing where they've come from and knowing what's important to them. And I think that's a great way to connect with anyone. Rural social work, urban social work. Sorry, just trying to make those special connections with our clients and with people. And page 62 in our textbook talked about work and trying to understand the different types of work in those communities and the wages, the benefits, the dangers involved in those. And that really could also help us understand our clients, understand some of their needs. If there's one large factory in that community that employs most of the people there and it closes or has layoffs, that's going to affect everyone in the community, the businesses, the families, the extended families. Understanding those dynamics are really, really important. Um, well, thank you. I hope you all have a great night.